right, good morning, everybody, and thank you for joining us for this Sarasota Bay deep dive broadcast where we interview people whose work has positive impacts on Sarasota Bay. My name is Darcy Young. I work with the Sarasota Bay Estuary Program here in Sarasota, Florida, and we have a mission of restoring and protecting bays from Anna Maria Sound down to the Venice Inlet here in Southwest Florida. And my guest for today's deep dive is Dr. Angela Collins. Hey, Angela.
Hey, Darcy.
And Angela works for the University of Florida as a Sea Grant Marine Extension agent based in Manatee County. Angela has a master's degree in biology and a PhD in fisheries biology and ecology from the University of South Florida. In her role at Sea Grant, Angela focuses on research and education related to sustainable marine fisheries, including commercial and recreational fisheries, as well as shellfish aquaculture initiatives. She's also conducted research on cow-nose rays, which are some of my favorite animals that live in our marine environment, hogfish, and Goliath and gag grouper. Angela also lived on a sailboat for years at the mouth of the Manatee River, and she was born right here on Anna Maria Island. So she is very much a native Floridian. She has more than 30,000 hours of ship time and has logged over 2,000 hours underwater. And I really love Angela's passion. Maybe it's an obsession with fish. And I think you'll see that come through in our conversation today. So welcome, Angela.
Thank you for having me. I'm always excited to talk about fisheries.
So there are so many questions I want to ask you today about a variety of different things, but we're here today to talk specifically about local seafood producers and specifically how they've been challenged during COVID-19 for these past few months. When we originally scheduled this interview back in April, we weren't sure how long the stay-at-home orders would last, and we're seeing those orders starting to lift now and restaurants beginning to reopen. But I still think that this information is incredibly important, and I'm really glad to have you on as our guest today.
Well, thank you for having me. Yeah, the COVID-19 situation has definitely impacted a lot of our local seafood producers, without a doubt, simply because of the way that the supply and demand chain works. As you know, like commercial fisheries are incredibly important to the state of Florida and to this area specifically. You know, the Tampa Bay and the west coast of Florida is a huge producer of marine seafood products and also shellfish aquaculture, the aquacultured bivalves, so clams and oysters are also the highest proportion is absolutely produced on the west coast of Florida. So, you know, just simply the way that consumers started eating when everything shut down definitely impacted the way that our seafood was moving around.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe we can start this conversation just giving our audience a sense of the scale of seafood production in the Sarasota Bay, Tampa Bay region.
Sure.
Kind of who's catching what and where's the market for that catch? Is it all local or are we sending it off to other places?
Okay, that's an excellent question. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here just to share a little bit of the information, and I'll have some talking points up. I think it'll be useful for the audience.
Okey-doke.
Okay, so this is actually a really useful website if you're interested in really diving into the details. This is maintained by FWC, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, and they basically keep track of all of the commercial fisheries landings that are brought in over the docks in the state of Florida. So the state of Florida by itself produces like over 84% of the nation's supply of grouper, lobster, shrimp, pompano, mullet, a lot of those species that are, you know, local to the Gulf of Mexico and South Atlantic waters. So Florida contributes a lot of seafood production nationwide, and we also export a lot of that domestically, so to other states, but also internationally. And so just sort of perusing through the past 10 years of data, I just put this little cheat sheet up here. It's basically a summary between 2008 and 2018 for the amount of seafood that was brought in. In the state of Florida, the total production was over 90 million pounds, and 69 million pounds were, brought over the docks on the west coast of Florida. So if you think about that, that's a large amount of seafood valued at over $214 million, almost $250 million every single year, which is a significant amount of dollar value that has been estimated for those seafood products. And then the Tampa Bay and Sarasota Bay area is a big contributor to that. Statewide, we probably contribute about 20% of total landings. And so those are brought in primarily in Pinellas County, Manatee County, and then a little bit in Hillsborough and also a little bit in Sarasota counties. So it's something to think about when you're thinking about the scale. And so, over the past, the University of Florida actually just completed an economic impact assessment for agricultural and commercial fishery products in the state of Florida. And I'm going to sort of put that data up here now. And this is looking at direct employment. So the industry supports directly, and this is actual jobs directly supported by commercial fishing, is right around 6,300. So over 6,000 jobs are directly supported. Over $334 million of direct economic output. And so of those dollars, about half of those are attributed to exporting our locally caught seafood to other states and to other countries. So we do export about half of what we catch to other states or other nations, but that's half of it staying here with us. And that is mostly distributed to our restaurant industry. So everybody that lives in Florida knows that tourism is king. A lot of the tourism is our number one industry here in the state. And, a lot of that is based on coastal visitation. People come to the beach. People want a grouper sandwich when they come to Florida. So, supporting the restaurants is a huge component of, supporting our seafood industry and ordering seafood from restaurants. That's where a lot of that seafood actually ends up is on the plate at different restaurants. I'm sorry, Darcy, were you going to ask me a question? I just was rambling on.
No, keep going. You're hitting the points.
Okay. So I just wanted to, we're talking about home today in Sarasota Bay. And for those of you that don't know this area, this is one of the most important producers of seafood in the state of Florida. This aerial image is of Cortez. So that is right there on Sarasota Bay. And what you're looking at here is, an aerial image of AP Bell Fish Companies right down here, right next to Starfish, one of the restaurants in Cortez Fishing Village. And then you've also got Killer Bait and Cortez Bait and Seafood here at the east end of the fishing village. So these two fish houses, a lot of the seafood that is landed on the west coast of Florida comes directly across these docks in Cortez Fishing Village. If you've never been to Cortez, it is one of the most unique places on the planet. It is truly one of the last working waterfronts in the state of Florida. It is historic. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, and it is obviously a huge contributor to the economy based on the amount of seafood that comes across these docks. But it's also incredibly fun for tourists to check out because there are, I think just in this little, the area of the village, there are probably 16 different places to eat, as well as different places to buy local seafood products and take home with you. You can cook it on your own as well. There's a Florida Maritime Museum in Cortez, Florida, that you can visit and learn all about some of the maritime history of this area. So, seafood production in Manatee County and in the Sarasota Bay region has been huge for hundreds of years.
And that, I think down at the end there of the photo, that looks like the fish preserve.
Yes. Oh, I'm so glad you brought that up. Absolutely. Yes. So right here is the Cortez village, the fishing village of Cortez. And then if you look right here at the east end of the village, you see this large stretch of undeveloped coastal land, which is a really big deal for Sarasota Bay, because anybody that's seen a satellite image of this area knows how much development has taken place along the shorelines of basically the entire state of Florida. And so this is the fish preserve right here. And this is a 95 plus acre plot of land that is protected from development and is completely owned and operated by the Florida Institute for Saltwater Heritage. They actually are the ones that put on the Cortez Commercial Fishing Festival every year. So a lot of people, when they think about Cortez, maybe you visited during the fishing festival. It's been going on for decades. And the Cortez Commercial Fishing Festival is kind of this big party with a purpose. The wonderful thing about the fishing festival is that all of the proceeds from the festival actually go right back in to supporting that fish preserve property. So when you visit the Cortez Commercial Fishing Festival, you're supporting the seafood community and the producers of seafood in Cortez, but you're also, all of the money that's generated from that festival goes straight back in to the Fish Preserve and the Florida Institute for Saltwater Heritage. So there's another, beautiful image of an aerial image of Cortez down here on the bottom left corner of your screen. You see Cortez Bridge right here going over to Anna Maria Island. And when you're in Cortez, you can check out all of the different restaurants, a lot of really good places to eat, but there's also the Florida Maritime Museum, like I mentioned before, and the Cortez Cultural Center, which is right there adjacent to the Fish Preserve. And so both of these are really wonderful ways to sort of, feed your history buff side and learn more about seafood production. And then obviously, as I mentioned before, there are places to purchase seafood in Cortez if you want to bring it home and fix it at home, or support one of the local businesses that are a lot of restaurants there in that area. So this, I like this picture because you can see more of the village. This is from the Florida Maritime Museum's website. And this is the Florida Maritime Museum here. This is the very east end of Cortez Fishing Village. You see the village is pretty small in the whole scheme of things. It's probably, 10 blocks, 11 blocks total. Right here, over here on the left side, this is the Fish Preserve. And then you've got Killer Bait right here, and Cortez Bait and Seafood producers come through these docks. Then you've got Swordfish Bar and Grill right here on the water. And then, up at the other end, you've got AP Bell Fish Company and Starfish Company right there on the water. And then there are also obviously a lot of other restaurants. You've got Tide Tables down here at the foot of the bridge. You've got Bunny and Pirates across the street, and Annie's Bait and Tackle, and a lot of different places to eat in Cortez. So if you're interested in that, I encourage you to check out. There's actually, after COVID started, Cortez community sort of banded together and created this website called CortezCarryout.com. And you can see all of the different businesses in Cortez that are doing carryout, that have maybe different operating hours, that might be doing delivery, some of them. Some of them are places where you can go, place an order to go. So there's a lot of places to support. And this is just in Cortez. Obviously, wherever you live, supporting local seafood is a great idea. But this is just sort of a nice resource if you were, thinking about wanting to buy some seafood from Cortez specifically.
Uh-huh. That's an awesome overview of the Cortez area, Angela. I love going up there. The first time I ever had smoked mullet was at the Commercial Fishing Festival, and still the best smoked mullet I've ever had.
So good.
Yeah. And so, you hit on some of the challenges that the seafood producers and the restaurants both are experiencing right now, and especially for the past couple of months. But I'm wondering, maybe we can talk a little bit about how that's different from other food producers that we think of. We've seen a lot of news about farmers and dairy producers needing to take a lot of what they've produced, and it essentially goes to waste unless they can find a market for it, or make a partnership with an organization that can help them donate it. So I feel like seafood may be a little bit different, and maybe you can talk about that.
Well, yeah, for sure. Wild caught seafood. If you think about the commercial marine fisheries, they basically fish and then deliver product. They have orders, and they're delivering the product as needed or as requested by some of the fish houses. So that that demand definitely went down when COVID first started. It was hard for just basically because, the consumer supply chain was sort of broken in a way. But the fish were still out there, obviously, and just potentially not being landed. Not as many were being landed during that time. So a lot of the commercial fisheries are managed on a quota. And when they get close to quota, that's when, they stop fishing for that species. Not all of them are managed that way, but that's just sort of an overview. So these guys don't have the struggle like the tomato farmers might, where they're having to just, throw away product that might be getting used, because, with seafood, you can also freeze it. But then freezer space can be an issue. So yeah, I think probably one of the biggest problems was just the reduced demand and and also the navigation of how to potentially explore other options for moving that seafood product around. So on the next slide here, I just wanted to sort of alert the group to this website. The Florida Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services is doing a lot to assist our agriculture industry. And our agriculture industry in Florida, I always have to remind people, does absolutely include seafood production. And that's our wild seafood products, as well as our commercially farmed aquaculture products, including, our bivalve shellfish farmers. So the FDAC's website is a great resource, even when COVID isn't happening, for finding products for seafood products. So kind of show you sort of what that looks like. When COVID started, they created basically this link up here at the top of that website where you can search for available products. So you might be a consumer looking for grouper, or you might be a producer that's trying to get rid of a certain thing. And so FDACS is working with Florida producers and consumers to partner, to try to allow them to find each other, basically. So this was a new addition to this website, once the COVID precautions went into effect. And then for people that are just looking for information on Florida seafood, this site is fantastic because it gives you an overview of like when you can find certain seafood, the peak months of availability, so you can see you can get farmed clams all year long. Those are available all year. So support your local clam farmers and buy clams when you can. Grouper, we're starting to get into grouper season for sure for getting fresh grouper. Mackerel also is, you start seeing that around this time, king mackerel. So this is just kind of another resource that's out there. But I do need to say that just because a species might not be checked on that calendar doesn't mean you won't be able to find it, because almost all of Florida seafood products are also available in frozen form at every place. So if you can't find it fresh, a lot of times you can find those species frozen. And then if you look over here on the right side of the website, you can see like some how-to tips, some festivals. If you're interested, right now the festivals are all on hold, but when that stops happening, this is a good place to look for seafood festivals. And then this one is another place I point people to. So the seafood retail markets, if you're like, how can I buy local seafood? I want to support the seafood producers, but I don't know where to buy it. You can just go here and click on the seafood retail markets. And they actually have a market locator. So you can see in the state of Florida, all the ones that have registered with the FDACS folks are mentioned in here. And you can see just in the Tampa Bay area, this is another indicator of how important we are to commercial seafood production here. This is a hot spot. So there are 18 right here in the general area where people can find a local seafood provider that they can buy product and take home. And then that's not even talking about all the restaurants that sell local products.
Right. So for most of these kind of establishments, are these going to be standalone fish markets, or does that include things like grocery stores where people may be going already?
It's a little bit of both. So some of the local smaller grocers might have more available local products. I can think of, a few right here in Manatee County that we visit often. Some of the larger markets like Publix, sometimes they'll have local products, but a lot of times, just because of the way that, their system works, their seafood isn't necessarily fresh from Florida type. So a lot of times you do need to visit your more local seafood markets to find find some of these things. That being said, Publix will carry fresh grouper when it's around. They'll have red snapper. When that is available, they'll have that in the fish case. Whole Foods also carries local products. And so I think more and more people are beginning to offer products that they didn't necessarily offer before. But I always recommend people too, when you're at Publix and you're at the seafood counter, you can always make that request. And the more people say it to the market, the consumer demand is a wonderful thing. So
right, exactly, yeah, and same with restaurants as well. I think that's one thing I always recommend. So Angela, local seafood, as we were just talking about, has a lot of competition from other fisheries around the world, and I'm wondering, we've talked a little bit about the economic case for buying local, supporting local jobs, but is there a good case from a sustainability standpoint for preferentially eating local seafood?
Oh, yeah. I'm glad you asked that question too, Darcy. Yes. Well, so first I just have to say that the United States is probably one of the, our fisheries are some of the most sustainably managed fisheries on the planet. So the U.S. does a pretty good job of keeping track of all of the species that are harvested, and they do a pretty good job at keeping tabs on the management of those species. It's one of the reasons why a lot of times your local products might be more expensive than the import products, because you're sort of, you're paying higher dollar for higher quality, and also a lot of times, more sustainable food because of the regulations that are in place to protect and conserve a lot of our fisheries. So I just wanted to say that first, is that our fisheries in the U.S. are managed really well. So, if you're going to buy and you have a question about sustainability, if you buy from the U.S., a lot of times, you can feel pretty good about how that fish is managed at a population level. But then also buying local, think about the carbon footprint, right? If you buy mullet from right here, that didn't have to travel very far. It's going to be fresher. It didn't have to, get on a truck or get on some sort of transportation system to get to our state. A lot of folks love salmon, and I love salmon too, but it does not come from right around here. It comes from far away. So if you're thinking about, just impact in the general, scheme of things, if you buy local, and this goes for every food item, buying local is going to, minimize some of that environmental footprint as well. Mm-hmm. And while we're talking about environmental footprints, this is a good time for me to tell you guys about the aquaculture industry. So, I just have to give this industry some props here, because clams and oysters are a bivalve shellfish product. These are naturally occurring organisms in our water. They are filter feeders. So a lot of times they will leave the water cleaner after they've grown than before they got there. And the hard clam and oyster aquaculture industries are growing in Florida for sure. So they do, supports a substantial amount of economic activity and jobs. And these are obviously a really green seafood product to eat. There are shellfish leases in Tampa Bay. So a lot of these hard clams that you might see at some of your local markets probably came directly from Tampa Bay or Cedar Key, which is just a little bit to our north, or Charlotte Harbor, which is just a little bit to our south. So we do have an active shellfish aquaculture industry here. It's a very yummy thing for people to consume. It's an excellent seafood product in addition to all of the marine fisheries that, we normally think about when we think about seafood. So just sort of maybe keep clams in mind and oysters in mind, and especially the aquaculture clams and oysters from Florida are just a great industry to support. I put this website here. The University of Florida maintains a website dedicated to shellfish production in the state of Florida. And when I say shellfish, I mean specifically bivalves like clams and oysters. So this is a great bookmark and gives a lot of information on the shellfish industry. And then if you wanted to specifically support local Tampa Bay area farmers, there are a couple that are actively farming Tampa Bay right now and have the capability for consumers to order things online. So Two Dock Shellfish is one of those companies. They are based in Tampa Bay. They just, since COVID started being able to sell direct to consumer. So you can actually go on their website, you can order your product and pick it up at a location that's convenient to you. They have a few locations in the area that they'll deliver it to, and you can go pick it up from. And then Lost Coast Oyster Company is one of the first off-bottom oyster culture shellfish farming operations in the Tampa Bay area. So these guys are also starting to produce more and more bivalves that are available. And then Joe Island Clams is one as well. And those guys don't have a website yet, but it's another company that is producing clams and selling to restaurants and also to seafood markets. So just maybe keep those shellfish products in mind as well when you're buying seafood.
Absolutely. And Angela, we don't have any shellfish leases in Sarasota Bay proper, right?
Currently, no, there are no active shellfish farming leases in Sarasota Bay, but I know that you guys listened to, Ernesto was your guest yesterday talking a little bit about some of the restoration activities and the benefits of, putting clams back in the water as a restoration effort. Same it holds true for oysters. So a lot of that is not necessarily for food production, but, for restoration purposes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, right now there's nothing in Sarasota Bay for commercial production. They're all in Tampa Bay right now. But that doesn't mean in the future they couldn't be.
Right. That would be amazing. Actually, we have a question here from Christine, which maybe I'd like to take a look at. She's wondering if there's any community-supported fishery programs in this area, similar to like a vegetable box program.
So that is a really good question, and I will say that my answer is not all knowing. There might be some out there that I don't know about, but the one that comes to my mind right away is the Bradenton downtown Saturday market has started offering seafood and this again was a new development since COVID began, but they are offering some seafood products now and their online ordering option at the Bradenton market. So it's kind of like a co-op-y. But as far as like a seafood box, I don't know of one here, but that is an awesome idea. And that would be a really good initiative to get moving. I think that we could probably get some traction with that.
Cool. Let's do it. Great, Angela. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us? Any kind of last tips? So
I just wanted to say the best, probably if people are just looking for ways to support the seafood industry in Florida, the best way to do that is eat more Florida seafood, whether that's buying it from your local seafood market or whether that's taking out food from your favorite restaurant that might have Florida seafood on the menu. Just providing that economic support is a great way to support our commercial fishing industry. And then, I also wanted to say, just since we're here and, I got to give a shout out to my employer here, the University of Florida and Florida Sea Grant have a website called Florida Seafood at Your Fingertips. And up here at the top of the screen, we've got a link for coastal businesses. And this is a good place for anyone in the community to click and get resources related to COVID economic assistance. So that's there and a resource for folks. But then also tonight, Wednesday evenings, beginning last week, but moving forward in the future, on Facebook, we're going to be doing live cooking demos with Florida seafood products or seafood products in general. Ooh. So tune in tonight at 6 p.m. And watch one of our Sea Grant agents, Dr. Savannah Berry, from up at the biological station in Cedar Key. She'll be demoing how to cook some shrimp, boom boom shrimp or bang bang or some kind of shrimp this evening at 6 p.m. So check that out. And every Wednesday it's going to be happening. So, and this website has a lot of seafood resources in general on, safety and handling and how-to tips.
Great. Are you doing one of those, Angela?
I am. I'm going to actually be making clams, and I'll be doing that in June.
Awesome. Well, Angela, this has been really informative for me. I like to eat Florida seafood as much as anybody, but it's been mostly restaurant based. And, I'm excited to, see what I can do at home. And you've given us a lot of really good resources for that. I think I'm going to take those links that you shared in your presentation and put them as comments on this video so that if people want to visit those links, they've got an easy way to do that. Angela, as your parting question, this is one that I've been asking everybody who's been a guest on our program. I'm wondering if you have a favorite part of Sarasota Bay.
Well, probably I'm going to have to say the fishing village of Cortez, which is located on Sarasota Bay. It is just a beautiful space, a wonderful place to eat, to walk around, to learn, and also just kind of a step back in time. It really, if you have never visited Cortez, it is really like stepping back into time, into old Florida. So I'm going to have to go with that today, I think.
Love it. Well, Angela, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to talk with you about this really timely topic. And, hopefully this is something that can inspire folks to keep making these choices, even as kind of we continue to recover from this crisis. So thanks for taking the time to talk with us today.
Thanks for having me. I had fun talking to you. It's always good to see you.
It's good to see you too. And I think what I'll do now is thank our audience for participating and watching this episode of the Deep Dive series. And I want to tell you that next Tuesday, we will be back here with another Deep Dive interview with Stevie Freeman Montez, who is the Sustainability Manager for the City of Sarasota. And she's going to be back. She's going to be with us with kind of another how-to, which is how to make sustainable choices that protect Sarasota Bay. So even if you're not a city resident, you'll want to tune into this one because we'll be talking about a lot of different arenas that you can make bay-friendly living choices. So thanks, everybody, and I hope that we'll see you next Tuesday.